to you today on the subject, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. This is off of my book that has just been released, and you have your outlines. And I want to, before I start teaching, kind of give you just the overview of the book. Basically, the book is divided in two sections, connecting principles and connecting practices. And we're going to talk about both of those today. Let's start with, of course, connecting principles. Number one. Connecting increases your influence in every situation. For the foundation of the teaching today, I want to make sure that we really have a grasp of why connecting with people is so vital. So if you go to the very first sentence in your note, the number one criteria for advancement and promotion for professionals is an ability to communicate effectively. That I do believe. I think the ability to connect and communicate is the number one criteria for success with your family, with your marriage, with your children, with your friends, in the workplace, the marketplace, in the community. If you have the ability to connect with people, if you can communicate and connect, not just communicate, it takes you and literally gives you and I a decided edge over others in the advancement of what we're trying to accomplish. For example, in your notes, presidential historian Robert Dallek says that successful presidents exhibit 5 skills and qualities that enable them to achieve things that others don't. So he's talking about leaders and presidents and people. What makes some achieve better than others? Here are the 5 things they do well. Number 1 is vision. Number 2, pragmatism. Number 3, consensus building. The ability to put together a team and get consensus. Number 4, charisma. And number 5, trustworthiness. Being a trustworthy kind of a person. Now, what is interesting about these 5 things that set the better presidents apart from maybe the average ones, 4 of the 5 deal with connecting. Vision is a definite connecting skill. The ability to cast a future vision, consensus building, getting people to work together. You have to be able to connect to do that. Charisma, of course, that's why people follow the quote, the Pied Piper, and trustworthy. 4 of the 5 of the skills needed to be successful as a leader had a lot to do with connecting. So let me define connecting, because that's what this book is all about. Connecting is the ability to identify with people and relate to them in such a way that it increases our influence with them. In other words, we can identify with them until they say, he or she understands exactly what I know and what I'm going through, and we can relate with them until we, because of that ability, we begin to increase our influence with them. And of course, what do I teach about leadership? Very simple, leadership is influence. I was doing an interview with a businessman in India about 6 months ago, and in the interview he was with Fortune 500 magazine, and he was talking to me about leadership, and we kept disconnecting. In fact, I've never been in an interview like it. I would say we were disconnected 10 or 12 times. And he was embarrassed, and he'd call me back. It was no problem. It took us a little while to work through the landmines of disconnection, but let me tell you this. When we were on the phone, we immediately realized when we disconnected. I mean, there wasn't any guess about it. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, I think we disconnected 2 minutes ago. I mean, immediately you knew when you disconnected. And yet when I talk to people about communication and connecting with people, I can tell you there are a lot of people, they're talking all day long and nobody's home. There's been a disconnect. I mean, I hear many times I'm hearing a good lesson, and maybe there's a slide, and all of a sudden there's a disconnect, and I sometimes just want to raise my hand and just want to tell the person who's doing the teaching, excuse me, you're disconnected here, because what I found is most people who disconnect don't know it. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be wonderful if communication was like a phone? And when we disconnect, there's kind of like a buzz, oh, nobody's there. And you stop and say, whoops, excuse me, I'm boring you. I know, I'm disconnected with you. Let me back up. Let me see if I can find you again. So I began to write in the book what I would call connecting signals. How do I know when I'm connecting with you, whether I'm speaking to you as a group or when I'm speaking and talking to you one-on-one? Let me give them to you. Extra effort. When you're connecting with people, they go the extra mile. Unsolicited appreciation. When you're connecting with people, positive things are said. Unguarded openness. When you connect with people, there's a sense of openness and trust that begins to be demonstrated. Increased communication. People express themselves more often and more readily when you're connecting with them. Enjoyable experiences. In other words, you're feeling good about the conversation. There's a synergy being given. Emotional bondedness. That's always displayed at the connection level. Positive energy. In other words, the emotional batteries are being charged. Growing synergy. And in other words, as the connecting increases and gets better, it builds. Unconditional love. There seems to be an acceptance without reservation when a person really knows how to connect with people. Now, these are not all of them, but these are just kind of connecting signals. So when you're talking one-on-one or in a group, you can kind of say, I think some of these signals are kind of showing up here. Interestingly enough, before I ever knew that I was going to speak, as a child, connecting became very important to me. I can still remember in elementary school looking around the room and seeing some kids that connected with their teacher. They were called teachers' pets. Do you remember? And other kids that didn't connect at all. And I can remember, I'm talking about second, third grade, beginning to study what makes some kids connect with their teacher, what makes some teachers connect with their kids, and what doesn't. Now, it was very unsophisticated, but at a very early age, I understood that there was going to be a relationship between my success and my ability to connect with people. And I put in your notes one of my favorite stories about connection and what happens when you don't connect well. And I just love it. It's called Jorge Rodriguez, the Bank Robber. Jorge Rodriguez was an old West bank robber from Mexico who operated along the Texas border around 1900. Rodriguez was so successful that the Texas Rangers established a special force to try to stop him. Late one afternoon, one of the special rangers saw Rodriguez slipping across the border back into Mexico. He trailed him at a discreet distance. He watched as the outlaw returned to his home village and mingled with the people in the square. When Rodriguez went into his favorite cantina to relax, the ranger slipped in and managed to get the drop on him. With a pistol in the bank robber's head, the lawman said, "Jorge Rodriguez, I know who you are. I've come to get back all the money you have stolen from the banks in Texas. And unless you give it to me, I'm going to blow your brains out." Rodriguez could see the man's badge, and he could discern his hostile intent. But there was a problem. He didn't speak English. He began speaking rapidly in Spanish, but the ranger couldn't understand what he said because he didn't speak Spanish. Just then a young boy came up and said in English, "I can help. I speak English and Spanish. Do you want me to be your translator?" The ranger nodded. The boy quickly explained everything that the ranger had said. Nervously, Rodriguez answered, "Tell the big Texas Ranger that I've not spent a cent of the money. If he would go to the town well, face north, count down 5 stones. He will find a loose one there, pull it out, and all the money is behind there. Please tell him quickly." The boy looked back at the ranger and said, "Senor, Jorge Rodriguez is a brave man. He says he's ready to die."
Oh my God.
Poor Jorge Rodriguez, huh? He only had one problem. Couldn't connect. Back to your notes, the ability to connect with others begins with the understanding the value of people. And this is a great truth. So let me just repeat it one more time, then we're going to go to what Jim Collins says. The ability to connect with others begins with understanding the value of people. I've never known a person to connect well with others that did not value people. Collins, author of Good to Great, observes, "Those who build great companies understand that the ultimate throttle on growth for any great company is not markets, technology, competition, products. It's one thing above all others." Here we go. The ability to get and keep enough of the right people. Jay Hall, the consulting firm Telemetrics, has studied the performance of 16,000 executives and found a direct correlation between achievement and the ability to care for and connect with people. Here are the few findings. We'll start at the left side. High achievers will go left or right across the grid. High achievers cared about people as well as profits. Average achievers concentrated on production, and low achievers were preoccupied with their own security. A lot of difference. High achievers, back to the left side, viewed subordinates optimistically, while average achievers were focused more on their own status, position. Low achievers showed a basic distrust of subordinates. Back to the left side. High achievers sought advice from those under them. Average achievers were reluctant to seek advice from those under them, and low achievers didn't seek advice. I can believe that. High achievers were listeners. Average achievers listened only to superiors. And low achievers avoided communication and relied on policy manuals. Beware of those who rely on policy manuals. Number one, we've just looked at very briefly, but it is true that your ability to connect increases your influence with everyone. So when you think of connecting with people, it will always add value to whatever you're doing. It will always make you better if you know how to connect.